Hey folks, Brendan here from Bluelight with another podcast stroke YouTube video to help support you through the police recruitment process, and for those of you who are serving officers, to help you prepare for your interviews that you've got ahead of you, whether it be for a specialist role or a transferee or for promotion, because I've found the formula. Yeah, that's right. I've been doing this now for over 25 years. Helping people when I was in service as a sergeant and inspector to succeed in interviews, promotion boards, and over the past decade I've been supporting people to succeed in the police recruitment process. Over 12,000 people are now in the police as a result of my support, something that's been an absolute privilege to do. And for serving officers, hundreds of serving officers who've succeeded in their promotion boards, in transfer interviews, specialist interviews. How have I been able to do it? Well, I've worked out what the formula is, because there is a formula to passing all of these assessments or interviews. And what they're based on? Well, they're based on the competency and values framework for policing. Prior to that, they were based on the policing professional framework. Now, one of the problems with this document is it's just so hard to understand. I mean, what's that all about? The wheel of confusion. So in this, we see that we've got 6 different competencies. They're broken down into clusters. So you've got 3 clusters of 2. Intelligent, creative and informed policing means analyse critically, and we're innovative and open-minded. And then we have 4 values that are in the middle: transparency, impartiality, public service and integrity. Now, the competencies have 3 different levels, but the values don't, for some odd reason. Now, I don't get it, because the thing is, the values aren't really values, because they're just about things like decision making. If you take a look at intelligent, creative and informed policing, you'll see that one of those is analyse critically, which involves decision making. So if you're confused, you could be forgiven. I mean, I geek out on this kind of stuff. I went back to university 20 years ago now. Over 20 years ago, I went back to university to do a master's in education, where I geeked out on personnel evaluation standards. You should have seen my holiday reading. But what that's enabled me to do over the years is to work out a formula, if you like, for how to pass anything, whether it's police recruitment, get your application form in, to succeed in your application form, to succeed in your promotion board, to succeed in role plays, presentations. It doesn't matter what it is, because you've got a tick box of things that you need to include. And once you know what that formula is, once you know what those tick boxes are, then all you need to do is to prepare yourself for the interview, the application form, the assessment centre, whatever it is make sure that you tick those boxes. Now, I know some of you are going to say that's really artificial, Brendan. Isn't that playing the game? Well, frankly, yes, it is playing the game. You don't think that people have not been doing that for decades, do you? I mean, I played the game to get promoted to sergeant. I played the game to get promoted to inspector. I didn't really play the game for my transfer interview from Cheshire to Bermuda, because I got asked some very, very odd questions. Things like, what's your average day like? My response, I'm a police officer. I don't have an average day. But I'll tell you about what I did yesterday. And I seemed quite happy with that. That was back in the days when we didn't have competencies. That was back in the days to get into the Cheshire Constabulary in 1985. I spent a total of 6 days worth of assessment. 3 of those days and 2 nights were in the Welsh mountains, getting absolutely beasted, crossing fast-flowing rivers, climbing up and down mountains, falling off oil barrels blindfolded after being kept silent in a shed blindfolded for an hour at 11 o'clock at night. I mean, what was that all about? I don't think there was a formula back then, but today there is. Anyway, listening folks, I'm going to talk to you about the formula, both from an application form perspective, from a serving officer perspective preparing for an interview, and for the online assessment centre. Listening folks, it could get a little bit complicated. I'll try and simplify it as much as I can. But by the end of this, I'll have proven to you that there is a formula. And if you apply the formula, which I can teach you, which I can show you, you've got to do the hard work, I'll show you the way, you will succeed. It's as simple as that. If you want some more information, by the way, just check the links below. Checking the blurb for the Facebook groups for serving officers, the Facebook groups for people who are wanting to join the police, and for links to the courses I can provide for you, the coaching and support, the one-to-ones, the webinars, the online courses, everything you need, everything you need. I've already worked out what the formula is. I will then show you what it is in a language that you understand, and then all you need to do is apply it. So let's take a look at an application form to start with. Now, a lot of application forms to join the police have changed over the years. It used to be one set standard based on the policing professional framework. That was the precursor to the competency and values framework. I think it went out the window in something like 2014, 15, although a lot of forces are still using it. I've just checked someone's application form to make sure it's good to go. And it's based on the policing professional framework. Come on, what's that all about? But one of the key skills they will ask you about, whether it's old money or new money, is decision making. I was asked questions about decision making on the Welsh Mountains in Dyfi back in 1985. It's a consistent question that's always asked. So it used to be called decision making under the police professional framework. Now you try and identify which value or competency decision making comes from. Go on, give it a go. Start having a think. Some of you might be going, oh, that's easy, that is transparency. Well, is it really? So what I've done here, and forgive me, I'm going to read off my notes here because there's a lot for me to remember, is I put together a formula for answering any question about decision making. So it might be, please can you tell me about a time when you've had to analyse multiple sources of information in order to make a decision where you've had to account for that decision to others. Or it could be an amalgam of all of those things. It could be just a little bit of it or all of it. Anyway, the first part is analysing information from a variety of sources. That comes from the competency of analyse critically. Now, you can then move into actually making the decision. Once you've analysed information critically, you will make the decision. You want to be impartial in how you make that decision. Well, that comes under the value of impartiality. And then you need to account for that decision to others and have a clear rationale for it. So that links in with the behaviours and the value of transparency. So we can see already that any questions about decision making might not necessarily be referring to any one competency or value. And if you are wanting to put together an awesome application form answer, or indeed an awesome answer for an interview, then this is how I would construct my answer. These are the boxes to be ticked. This is the formula. So first of all, I'd be talking about how I was faced with a problem, a difficult decision I had to make, but I wasn't quite sure what I should do. If you know what to do, it's not a difficult decision, is it? If you know what to do instinctively, or a process or policy tells you, then it's not difficult at all. So we're going to start off with a problem, a decision, something that's a conundrum that you don't know the answer for. And so the first thing we need to do is to collect information about that problem, and then make decisions about what information is relevant and what information is irrelevant. We might want to consult policy and procedure because there might be some guidelines there that can help you, or actually the guidelines may not help you because they may be telling you to do one thing where your gut feeling is to do the right thing, and the right thing doesn't quite follow policy or procedure. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start thinking about all the information that we've got and start thinking about options and the pros and cons of each one of those options, and the risks if we either take on one of those options or we don't. So what could happen if? What could happen if? We also need to be cognizant of any gaps or inconsistencies and the implications of not having certain items of information, because you can never know everything about everything. So if you look at the behaviours under Analyse Critically, you'll see that I've actually just pretty much talked you through not all of them, but a lot of the behaviours in Analyse Critically. So we want to make sure that the first part of our answer includes how you did all of those things. Simply saying I followed procedure and policy is not enough. Simply saying I weighed up the pros and cons is not enough. You need to explain how you actually went about doing that. So now, before we've made the decision, we're going to demonstrate that we consider the views and opinions of others. So this would mean asking trusted sources. So I still wasn't quite sure what to do. So I went to a mentor of mine, or I went to my sergeant, or I went to one of my colleagues who was a lot more experienced than me, and I told them about my conundrum and asked them for their view and their opinion. So I weighed up all of that, all of the information I'd gathered, all of the views and opinions that people had given me. I weighed up the pros and cons of all the different options. And then I started to think about what would be the fairest decision. So this is where I might think about lining up an imaginary group of people. I used to call it the 10 peopleometer. Line up the next 10 people who come past the police station and tell them what you're about to do. If they all say, what a great idea, it's probably a great idea. If they all go, oh God, what are you doing that for? Then it's probably not a good idea, so don't do it. Make your decision in an objective way, so you're using the best evidence possible. So that might be previous guidance, it might be previous experiences, it might be what people have told you. And so then you can ensure that your decision that you've made is one that you can be clear about your rationale in, so you can explain your rationale. Now, the words there, we are clear in our rationale for our decisions, is actually taken from impartiality. But then if you jump over to transparency, you'll see that one of the behaviours is, I ensure my decision-making rationale is clear and considered so it can be understood by others. That's pretty much the exact wording as what you'll find in impartiality. In impartiality, we are clear in our rationale for decisions. In transparency, I ensure my decision-making rationale is clear and considered. It's almost the same, except you've added the word considered. So if you get confused about the competency and values framework, you could be forgiven for that, because it is confusing. And it's confusing for exactly the reasons I've just explained there. But what we've got there, and I hope this makes sense to you, is a formula. So if you are asked any questions about decision making, whether it's based on transparency, impartiality, or analysed critically, if you answer your question using that formula, you're going to nail it. Because remember, the person who's assessing your application form or assessing your interview, they don't understand the competency and values framework. No one understands it. I've not been able to find anyone that can explain to me why values don't have 3 different levels, but competencies do, where exactly the same behaviours are described in values as in the competencies. I've just described to you here how in impartiality, it talks about being clear in your rationale for your decision, and in transparency, it talks about that. In analysed critically, it talks about decision making based on information. So it's bound to sound confusing because they all cross over like that. Sorry if you're listening to us on a podcast, I just sort of held my hands together and interlocked my fingers. So basically just follow the formula. If you explain your decision making using all of those different tick boxes, then I promise you, you will nail it. You'll deliver the perfect answer. So if you might be thinking, well, I want to go for sergeant or inspector, well, that's at level 2. So if you look at the level 2 behaviours, you'll see that actually the only one that's got a change in behaviours is analysed critically, because remember, the impartiality value and the transparency value don't have different layers or levels, but analysed critically does. But if you look at analysed critically, you'll see it's all pretty much the same, except that there's a big emphasis on making decisions based on limited information and how to mitigate the risks in doing so. So when you do make a decision based on limited information, how do you mitigate any risks that may appear? So all you need to do is just include that in your analysis, and then everything else is exactly the same. So I hope that makes sense. Right, let's move on then to a in-force interview. Now, this is based on some one-to-one coaching I've just been doing recently with someone who wants to transfer from one force to another. They know they're going to get asked a question on We Are Collaborative. So what they talked about to me about when they gave their sample answer was how they're working at this moment in time with some victims of sex offences. There's a number of them, rape and sexual offences, and how they are referring the victims to a charity that is there to support victims of sexual offences. I started thinking, well, that just sounds like business as usual to me. That doesn't sound like it is making me go wow, or God, that's amazing. That's incredible. So I started thinking, and that we are collaborative behaviours that are described is the following. So my advice to him, and he's doing it this week actually, so they can actually say at his interview, I did this. Not that this is what I would do in the future, but I actually did this. So as opposed to doing referrals, I've set him a bit of a task, a bit of homework. He's going to meet with the head of that particular charity. He's going to meet with them for half an hour or so, and the idea is so he can better understand the work that they do, not to find out what they can do for him, but moreover for him to start thinking about what he can do for them. So as opposed to, because he initially said, well, I'll email them and ask them some questions, or I'll have a phone call with them. No, face to face. Build up a rapport with them. Find out something about them. Ask them questions. How did you get into all of this? What sort of background led to you working for this charity? How do you find working in the charity? What do you love about it the most? Start building a rapport, get to understand them, get to know them. And from there, you can start asking questions about, so I'm quite sure that on many an occasion, you've turned around and said things like, if only the police would do more of. Finish that sentence for me. If only the police would do more of. If only the police could do X better. Describe X to me. What we could really do with is some support in. Finish that sentence for me. So what you're doing now is you're trying to find out what it is they do well, what people who work for that charity love, what they're proud of, and then asking them questions about what they would love to improve or what the police could do to help them improve their service. And then once you've got that information, act upon it and do something to help them. So that what you've done in that meeting is you've actually helped them through a problem, even though they didn't have to ask for it. Just focus on one thing, just one thing. So I'd stress that in the questions I ask. Not a long list, just what's the one thing that the police could do better, or that if only we had more of X, whatever X is. What's that one thing? You can't have X, Y, and Z, just X. So he's going away, he's doing that this week. Why is that so important? Well, one, because it does work. It's something I call the emotional bank account. This is where you provide for the emotional bank account by approaching partner organisations. I did this a lot as a neighbourhood inspector, and you find out what you can do to help and support them before they need to ask for it, before they need to ask for that help and support. Why? Because when you need some help and support from them, all you need to do is ring them up and give them a call. You're on first name terms because you've already spent time getting to know them. You understand their organisation because you've spent time with them. You understand the stresses, the direction they're going in, the vision that they have, the problems that they have, and you've already helped them. So when you call them and ask for some help, they will willingly give it to you because you are in credit in your emotional bank account. Right, now it works, by the way. Give it a try, it works. It's got to be face-to-face though, and it's got to be face-to-face where they work, on their patch, not at the police station, not in one of your community meetings, not in one of your community safety partnership meetings, but this is something that you set up outside of it. You're investing time in building up a rapport, and I know what you're going to say, oh, we're all too busy for that sort of thing. Well, if you think you're all too busy for that sort of thing, then you're probably right. And you're not going to succeed in the transfer interview, and you won't succeed in your promotion board. Well, you might do, but you're not going to set yourself aside. So let's see why that approach of fulfilling the emotional bank account is so important. I've got the We Are Collaborative behaviours in front of me here, where it talks about working cooperatively with others to get things done, willingly giving help and support to colleagues. There you go, so we tick that one off. I am approachable, and I explain things well and generate a common understanding. So in my conversations, I'll be talking about having a shared vision, a common understanding. I take the time to get to know others and their perspectives in order to build a rapport, face to face, as opposed to email or phone call. I treat people with respect as individuals and address their specific needs and concerns. Well, you've asked them for their needs and concerns. I'm open and transparent in my relationships with others, because you've already said the reason why I want to meet with you is so we can strengthen the relationship to ensure that we deliver a better service for the victims of these sexual offences. And you ensure that you're clear and appropriate in my communication. Now, what this individual is doing actually moves into the level 2 of We Are Collaborative, that bit there in the middle, because it's talking about managing relationships and partnerships for the long term, sharing information, building trust to find the best solutions, creating joined up solutions across organisational boundaries, partner organisations, understanding the local partnership context, helping me to use a range of tailored steps to build support, working with partners to decide who's best placed to take the lead, anticipating our partners' needs and taking action to address these. See, it's a formula. We've got the formula. All I've done is told him what he needs to do. He's going to do the hard work, and then he'll be able to give an account of what he's done. He is going to nail that answer. I absolutely promise him he's going to nail that answer. So he's going to get asked a question about We Are Collaborative. It is probably going to be along the lines of, can you tell me about a time when you work cooperatively with others to solve a problem? It'd be something as basic as that, and he is going to nail it. So next, have we got time? Yeah, we've got time for one more. So the stage 3 briefing for the online assessment centre. You're going to be assessed against working with others. Now, to help people pass the online assessment centre, I produced little guides like this one, which is a sample exercise. And in that sample exercise, you will get to practice the actual skills that are needed to pass the online assessment centre briefing. Equally, with the competency and values interview, the stage 2, I provide sample interview questions and the behaviours that need to cover so we can practice them. Again, I'm giving you the formula. That's the formula. I do the same thing for serving officers, for promotion boards. We have weekly workshops where we actually get to practice them. So for the stage 3 briefing, one of the things I would look to do in the noisy party scenario, so you're going to be asked questions about how you deal with a noisy party, is in any question, first questions you get might be your initial thoughts or your initial considerations. The first thing I'd start doing is to identify the exact problem that I'm dealing with so that I can best respond to it. And one of the ways I'd intend to do this is to gather information from a range of different sources. And of course, when you talk about that, you're leaping over into different competencies and values. I would talk about how I would keep the residents updated about my progress in resolving this problem, the noisy party problem. I would volunteer to take on additional tasks, and I would word that as I will take personal responsibility for ensuring that. And then you list off a series of solutions. And by the way, I give you all the solutions that you need. I know some people may be thinking, well, that's unfair, that is, Brendan. Yeah, but what if you've got close social ties with the police? In Lancashire Constabulary, a few years ago, someone did some research. They found that 92% of everyone who succeeded had a close social tie with the police. 8% of those who succeeded in the recruitment process didn't. So that's an incredible imbalance. What that means is that if you've got people who you know in the police already, or if you're in the police already as a PCSO or special, this is going to be a breeze for you because you've got people who can give you advice about how to best deal with it, best practice, or you've actually dealt with things like this. What if you're a 35-year-old manager at a supermarket and you want a change in career? Or as earlier, I was speaking to someone who's a logistics manager, 40 years old, wanting a change in career. They're not aware of all of these things. So is it unfair? No, I think the system's unfair. All I'm doing is I'm showing you how to play an unfair system. So anyway, back to the point, I'll be talking about taking on additional tasks, taking on personal responsibility. I would also be talking about seeking and seeing what I could do to find a compromise, to negotiate a compromise between the householders and the partygoers, making sure that everyone understands what I've been saying so that they're clear in their expectations. So those are just a few things that you can talk about in your briefing exercise. Why would you talk about those things? Well, again, we have a formula. All we're doing there is a formula. Let me just find the working, we take ownership. Sorry, we take ownership. It talks about actively identifying and responding to problems. We'll just tick that one off. We talk about where you can help others, taking on additional tasks to support them where appropriate. Yep, just tick that one off, haven't we? Taking responsibility for your actions and fulfilling promises and doing what you said you will. Yep, we ticked that one off, haven't we? Demonstrating pride in representing the police service. We've ticked that, well, we ticked that one off overall. Where else is there? There's another one here. I give feedback to others that I make sure is understandable and constructive. So where people have got unreasonable expectations about what you're going to do with the party, you seek compromise and you negotiate and make sure everyone understands. So by doing those things, by having that formulaic approach in dealing with anything, so if the College of Policing changes it tomorrow from a noisy party to something else, it doesn't matter. You apply the same formula, because if you know you're being assessed against We Take Ownership, then you know, well, actually I work it out for you. These are the things that you need to refer to and say. You do the hard work, I just show you the way. I will show you the formula so that you don't need to worry about the competency and values framework. Well, listen, folks, hopefully that makes sense to you. I know that's 26 minutes of your life, but it could just help you succeed, make the difference in massive success, or only just scraping through, or even failing at the assessment centre. My clients experience massive success. They experience massive success because I understand the systems that the police use. Whether you think it's unfair or fair, or whether you think I give people an advantage, yes, I do give them an advantage, but bear in mind what I said, that in the Lancashire Constabulary a few years ago, 92% of everyone who was successful in the recruitment process had a close social tie with the police. Only 8% didn't. The system is already unfair. And don't even get me on the subject of an adverse impact ratio, because people who are white and British have a far, far higher chance of success in the recruitment process than people who are black, especially black non-British. And challenge me every day of the week on that one if you want. All the data actually comes from the College of Policing. It demonstrates it's massive. The difference is massive. It's not just a couple of percentage points. It's in tens of percentage points. So don't get me on the subject of unfair. You're in an unfair system. You're in a system that is capable of being gamed, so play the game. Those who hold gold make the rules. All we've got to do is make sure we play by the rules. So there you go, folks. Hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully it was helpful for you. Check the links below for all the things, all the goodies that can help you through the process. And I look forward to seeing you in a one-to-one or in a webinar or on the Facebook group, wherever I can give you support and help you to succeed. Be awesome. Catch up with you soon. Bye-bye for now.